Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran. Today I want to go over Outlaw Rogue for the pre-patch. I want to talk about the stats, talents, rotation, abilities, talk about cooldowns, utilities, basically everything to get you guys started playing Outlaw Rogue in the pre-patch. Now, nothing is balanced around the pre-patch. All the abilities and all your talents are balanced around level 110, but we can't do anything of level 110 until Legion releases in 30th. So a lot of the abilities, a lot of the damage increases, a lot of the balancing isn't going to be perfect. But this is only a pre-patch. The actual game comes out 30th, so only then do I want to make a real guide. Right now I just want to make you a guideline of how to start playing Outlaw Rogue. I want to go through the stats, I want to go through talents with you, I want to go through the abilities, through the rotation, as well as talk about some of the other abilities you should know when playing Outlaw Rogue. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video. Let's get to it. First things I want to go over is stats. You'll see the stat window is fairly simplistic now. I'm pretty sure there's going to be add-ons in the future where you can expand it to the old stat tree over, let's say, warlords, for example. When you take a look at the stats, for PvP, none of the stats, none of the enchantments, none of the buffs you have for yourself, none of that makes a difference. Once you enter PvP combat, in BGs or arenas, at least on a pre-patch, your stats are normalized. That means Blizzard and the guys behind the office have specific stats for you. Specific amount of agility, stamina, armor, even critical strike, haste, mastery, and versatility that you get once you enter PvP combat, whether it's arenas or battlegrounds. I went into arenas and I had enchants for mastery on my rings. I even tried replacing one of the enchants or one of the rings with a legendary ring, at least a legendary working ring. Never got the original, and my buffs for a mastery did not go down, even though this ring doesn't have any mastery enchants to it. So in the end, enchants don't actually activate. None of the enchants for neck, cloak, rings, or even weapons activate once in PvP. Your trinket use effects get disabled once you enter PvP combat. So in terms of stacking stats, I don't think we'll be able to stack that much stats when it comes to Legion PvP. If you are getting some kind of gear and you are looking for specific stats, mastery is no longer the stat to stack. If you're looking at any stats, I think haste and versatility are pretty good. We don't need to get critical strike. You'll see why. I'll talk about it in the future. Mastery is about 48, 49, maybe even 50% flat for PvP. So because mastery is at 50%, stacking it any higher is not really going to help us when it comes to playing Outlaw Rogue. What was cool as a combat rogue is you could get mastery to 100%, so you had like a guarantee that you'll get an extra hit every time you hit for mastery. So it is good when bursting, good when we deal sustained damage, and good for our energy. If we can stack mastery too high, then haste will be good to get a bit more energy, or versatility for just a flat buff for everything. Everything is up in the air. I don't really know which stat is the best for now, but this is a pre-patch and it's not like you can really stack a stat right now. Let's talk about talents. I'm going to go over them pretty quickly. Level 15 talents, you have Ghostly Strike, Sword Master, and Quick Draw. I like Ghostly Strike. It basically is 30 energy, generates 1 common point, and puts a debuff on the enemy where they take 10% increased damage from your abilities for 15 seconds. So you basically would keep this buff on your enemy, you can put it up in an opener, kind of like how you would do originally with like a Revealing Strike. So you can basically put this in where a Revealing Strike would go on your bars. I don't really like Swordmaster because one of the buffs from Roll the Bones we have is Jolly Roger, which I'll talk about it in the future. Basically it makes this ability obsolete. Mainly because we have Jolly Roger, I feel like it makes this buff basically obsolete because 10% damage increase once Jolly Roger buff is available is kind of useless. Quick Draw was really good, but I have some issues with it. It used to be that free pistol shots granted by Saber Slash now generate 1 additional common point and dealt 100% increased damage. Now they deal only 50, which kind of sucks. If this ability maybe said all pistol shot damage is increased by 50%, then maybe I would buy into this ability, but it only works for free uses of pistol shot, so I feel like it's not quite as good. I feel like Ghostly Strike, even though it's only 10% damage increase, it's something Outlaw Rogue definitely needs, because I feel like without the 10% damage increase at all times, your sustained damage is not quite as good as some of the other classes. Also, you don't have that many damage increasers until you get to Legion at level 110, so anything we can get right now is good. Level 30 we have Grapple and Hook, Acrobatic Strikes, and Hit and Run. Hit and Run is nice for the movement speed increase. You can run around in BGs and arenas a little bit faster, but because there's slows in the game, those slows will basically make Hit and Run obsolete. Acrobatic Strikes is really cool because you can be kind of at range from your enemy and be able to kind of hit them, but because of latency, sometimes you won't be able to really kite around your enemy and keep it away from the melee range at all times as an Outlaw Rogue. mainly because it only gives you 3 yard of difference and only for your melee based abilities. The one I prefer the most is Grappling Hook because it's a 40 yard range, 30-second cooldown, and it's basically a heroic leap. It can take you basically anywhere you want to go at a 40 yard range. So I was about over there, but now I'm over here. That's enough of distance to escape from a bad situation or get into a good situation, whether you're trying to train a healer or just trying to escape a death knight from trying to burst you. At level 45 is Deeper Stratagem, Anticipation, or Vigor. I like Vigor. Vigor, you get 50 energy just to hold from the very get-go. You also get 10% energy increase, so that's always really good. Makes me kind of feel like a combat rogue back in the day. Having a lot of energy and a lot of energy to spend as an Outlaw Rogue is definitely helpful and definitely a direct increase for your damage. You could go Deeper Stratagem and have 6 common points to use, and your finisher moves deal 10% increased damage. But your finishers don't really deal that much damage as an Outlaw Rogue to begin with, so I don't really find this talent quite that good. So I feel like Vigor is a bit better. Level 60 is really a choice between Iron Stomach and Elusiveness. I don't really like Cheat Death, never really liked it, how it functioned. Elusiveness is great when you have a healer, like in an arena situation, or in a BG when you know you have a dedicated healer that will heal you, because 30% damage decrease is nice. Otherwise, you can go Iron Stomach for a little bit extra healing from your Crimson Vial. Level 75 tree is kind of garbage in my opinion. Parlay is basically a sap and it works like a sap, but you can use the sap while out of stealth. In most cases as a rogue, if you're out of stealth, usually you are in combat, and when you're in combat you can't CC or you can't sap somebody. So Parlay becomes kind of useless, plus it replaces your blind, like it's ridiculous. Prey on the Weak would be cool, but Prey on the Weak does not include your new stunt Between the Eyes, so you don't get 10% damage increase from Prey on the Weak from Between the Eyes. So basically throws the ability out of water for me already. I like Dirty Tricks. It is, I guess, okay. Your Gouge, Blind, Cheap Shot, and Sap have no longer energy cost. Level 90, I like the choice between Cannibal Barrage or Killing Spree. Killing Spree is above by 24% recently, so it's a 2-minute cooldown, functions like a normal Killing Spree, but no longer makes you teleport to the enemy's location and follow them. Instead, it'll make you follow the enemy as long as you're bursting, but then it will reset you to your starting location, so no longer can you use it to follow a healer or follow a caster as they're teleporting around or moving around the battlefield. I also like Cannibal Barrage because it's a 1-minute cooldown, it deals decent damage, and it doesn't split damage in an AoE. Everybody in the reticle for the AoE is hit for the same amount, so you can use it in battlegrounds in order to hit multiple targets for the same amount of damage. And it's a 1-minute cooldown, so you can use it a lot more often. At level 100, I don't like Slice and Dice because I like Roll the Bones. Roll the Bones is way too many PvP buffs for you to give up, so I don't go Slice and Dice. I know a lot of people complain about, oh, Slice and Dice is gone. I think Roll the Bones is better, especially when you get the right buffs. Mark for Death is the way to go. Free 5 common points and 1-minute cooldown. You can do anything you want to do with those common points, so the utility is great. Death from above would be cool, only if Run Through dealt any kind of damage. Run Through doesn't really deal that much damage, especially on the Legion beta. So getting for 50% increased damage with Run Throughs is not that great in my opinion. Let me talk about the rotation. But instead of talking about rotation, I kind of want to talk about each single ability first of all, just to talk to you guys about how you chain abilities and how they work well together. Let's talk about the basic common point builder first of all, which is Saber Slash. The original common point generator you had was Revealing Strike and Sinister Strike. So you will put Revealing Strike on a target and it would make your finishers deal 40% more damage and 40% more effective. That whole mechanic's gone. Sinister Strike is gone, replaced with Saber Slash. Saber Slash is 50 energy, attacks the enemy for about 24k worth of damage, and has a chance, 35% chance, to strike an additional time and grant you a free pistol shot. So there's a lot of combinations in terms of Saber Slash, just how it functions. So let me hit it a couple times to get that free Saber Slash for you guys. Now Saber Slash hit there twice, and I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything to generate extra common points. On its own, I hit it once, but the ability hit twice and generated an extra common point. Plus, if you watched it, every time you hit a second time of Saber Slash, you get another buff, which is Opportunity. Your next pistol shot is free. So the whole playstyle around Outlaw Rogue is really about getting in your enemy's face and using Saber Slash. And the more free Saber Slashes you can get out of your opponent, the more damage you're dealing overall, and the more common points you're building, the more effective you are. So Saber Slash is like Revealing Strike and Sinister Strike plus more in a single button. We also have Pistol Shot, which can be proc for free from your Saber Slashes. Pistol Shot, we draw a concealed pistol. Your Pistol Shot doesn't deal quite as much damage as your Saber Slash, but it has the slow effect to it and generates one common point. So this is how you slow enemies with a Pistol Shot. In most cases, once you get in a melee situation, with the free procs of pistol shot, whoever you're hitting, you're always going to have the slow, because once in a while, you're going to have the free pistol shot, so it's a free slow. You can also use pistol shot to kite enemies when they're far away from you, like maybe a paladin or a warrior, another rogue or a feral, and keep them at a distance with a slow and generate combo points as you're trying to kite away from enemies. Your finisher, which is a big one, is run through. It has a bit of range, a 5-yard range, so you don't have to be right next to the enemy to use it. This is about how far you can be from an enemy to use it, which is interesting of an ability. It just spends your combo points. That's literally all it does. It is not that much of, it's not that great of an ability. It is okay. It doesn't quite deal a lot of damage. It is alright at most. Now I want to talk about the stun, which is an interesting one, between the eyes. So between the eyes will deal damage to the enemy based on the combo points you invested into it. Like right now at 5 combo points, it'll hit for 31k and it will stun your enemy for 5 seconds. This means you have a ranged stun. So let's say you're training one target. I'm going to denote this trained dummy to be with an icon. So we have the trained dummy right here. Let's say he's a healer. And then I have this one right here who's a mage. I'm hitting the mage for a little bit, right? Hit the mage for a bit. Oh, the healer is casting something. I can just get somewhat close. Pistol shot him from range. So now you have a lot of viability and versatility as an Outlaw Rogue in terms of how you CC your opponents. With a range stun, you can off CC healers, off CC DPS at a range, and even stun along the target you're trying to kill. It will deal a little bit of damage and will CC them, which is really cool. You see how I have 5 combo points? Usually I would just invest them into a slice and dice or a recuperate. Instead, now I have Crimson Vial, which takes 30 energy and has a 30-second cooldown. It'll basically use the vial, and over 6 seconds it'll heal you for 7% of your maximum health every 1 second. Why 7%? Is because of Iron Stomach, so normally it will be 30% of your health. So that is how you heal every 30 seconds instead of having to spend combo points into a constant recuperate. I kind of like it. Now I want to talk about the big one, which is Roll the Bones. So every time you roll the bones, which replaces your slice and dice, you're going to have between 1 to 6 buffs. You have completely RNG chance, like Hearthstone RNG, to get whatever buffs you can get. There's 6 buffs in total, and each single buff can modify how you play your playstyle, which is how I play Roll the Bones. Most of the times I get an open on a target, I'll roll the bones to see what kind of buffs I get, and then adjust my playstyle slightly to the buffs that I get. So let me show you some of the examples of the buffs and how you can adjust your playstyle depending on the buffs that you get. And we got a crit buff. Crit buff means you got the buff of Shark Infested Waters. Increases critical strike chance, increased by 40%. This is why as an Outlaw Rogue you don't stack crit, because you're always going to have that 40% crit once in a while from Roll the Bones. With a crit chance, you basically can go and use some of the biggest damage dealing abilities because you have a way higher chance to have them crit. So example of this would be Cannibal Barrage or Killing Spree can be used as a denotation for the burst. So when you get critical strike, make sure to just hit your enemy as much as possible, as often as possible, and save your big cooldowns for critical strike, because then you're more likely to drop your enemy faster. Roll the Bones again, we got 2 buffs. One of them is Buried Treasure, increases energy regeneration by 40%. That means you can use your Saber Slash and your other abilities a lot more often, and this buff works really well when you're using to kiting it together with Pistol Shot. When you're kiting the enemy and you're just spamming Pistol Shot, or maybe if you're chasing after the enemy, spamming Pistol Shot, trying to deal as much damage into the enemy as possible while keeping them constantly slowed with the extra energy regeneration. The next buff we have here is Broadsides. Your attacks generate 1 additional combo point. During Broadsides, what I like to do is use Saber Slash once and sparingly, use my energy very sparingly, because I generate 5 combo points very quickly and getting as many run-throughs as I can. So you do it very sparingly. Because Saber Slash has a chance to hit again, with a single Saber Slash I can have a full combo point filled bar. And I'm saving my free pistol shots whenever I don't get the extra Saber Slashes in there. So you can be very economic with your energy, very economic with your combo points, and getting as many run-throughs as possible for extra bit of damage. We get another buff, which is Grand Melee. It replaces the old Slice and Dice of back in the day. Grand Melee increases the attack speed by 40% and Leech by 20%. So if you are looking for some kind of extra bit of healing and you want to have a bit more survivability, getting Grand Melee is good when going against casters and melee alike, because that means your Crimson Vial will heal for a little bit more. Plus all your attacks will heal you for slight bit of extra health. The buff of True Bearing is really cool, as finishers reduce the remaining cooldown of many of your abilities by 2 seconds per combo point. This amounts for your offensives, your CC, and defensives. So for example, let's say I'm building a couple combo points off of a target. I'm gonna get the other target stunned. My stun has a 20-second cooldown to it. So I stun the enemy, mark for death, run through. My stun now has an 8-second cooldown. I get another run through, I got my stun back. So you can use True Bearing for your offensives, defensive, CC, utility based abilities, and most of your abilities in order to reduce the cooldown and get it back much quicker, which is one of the best buffs an Outlaw Rogue can get. Jalraj is a good buff, and there's the reason why we don't go for Swordmaster. When you have Jalraj available, your Saber Slash has a 40% chance to strike an additional time. So 35% chance for Saber Slash already, 40% chance increase, that means 75% chance to hit an additional time. So this is why we don't go for Swordmaster. 75% chance and 85% chance are not that much different. So this is why you usually don't go for Swordmaster as an Outlaw Rogue. With a combination of Jalraj and Broadsides, you're likely to fill up your combo point bar to full every time you use Jolly Roger. So basically during Jolly Roger, try to get as many Saber Slashes in there because most of them will be free extra Saber Slash hits. Let's talk about openers real quick about an Outlaw Rogue. Openers are not that important because your opener is fairly same now. No longer do you have Garrote, so you can't really do a crazy different opener on a different target depending on if they're a caster or if they're a melee. As an Outlaw Rogue, all you really do as an opener is Cheap Shot. I like to combo Cheap Shot into Ghosted Strike, which is on your rotation bar as well, to get that Revealing Strike off as early as possible. Before every fight, the way I get to use Mark for Death is I usually mark for Death target and then roll the bones to see what kind of buff I get. And as I told you before, when you are playing Roll the Bones, you can adjust your playstyle depending on what buffs you got. So I got a 40% chance to crit and Broadside, so I'm not going to spend too much into my energy. I'm actually going to get a run through, Saber Slash, free Saber Slash into a stun. I'll try to slow down and tell you exactly what happened there when I go back to edit the video and show you exactly what I did in the opener depending on what buffs I get. In terms of burst, you basically can use Adrenaline Rush anytime you want to. You don't have a red buff mechanic anymore as an Outlaw Rogue, they took that away. But instead they have more of a more controlled damage increases for you. But you have to unlock the PvP talents in order to have a bit more control to it. Currently the only way you have of damage increase is Ghosty Strike. But this is a good thing because Outlaw Rogues no longer have a ramp up mechanic that a Combat Rogue had. So you no longer had to ramp up your burst in order to start dishing out actual damage. You can kind of dish out damage whenever you want to or whenever you choose so. In most cases, what you are trying to look out for is one buff in particular in order to deal the most amount of damage. I'll roll through the buff until I get it. The buff you're really looking for is Shark Infested Waters. That's the buff that basically denotes when you should burst, because it means your critical strike chance increased by 40%. So let's say I'm hitting a train dummy, I decide to go Killing Spree into it with a 40% increased chance. Basically, every single Killing Spree, Master Strike, and offhand Killing Spree hit I did was a critical strike. So this is basically enough to take a player from full health to none. I guess I could talk a bit about the rotation a little bit and how I open up. So for example, every time I open on somebody, I like to use Mark for Death, then Roll the Bones, in order to see what kind of buffs I get. So I got Broadsides and Jolly Roger. That means like in Cheap Shot into Ghosted Strike, I can actually just use a run through and then get a Saber Slash in there, and most likely it will be a guaranteed chance. Cheap Shot, run through, Ghost Strike, run through, Saber Slash, 3 combo point, stun. So now I'm just trying to get as many Saber Slashes into my enemy as possible. When my buffs are about to fall off, I want to make sure that I get another roll. I got the buff for Shark Infested Waters and then True Bearing. That means I can actually just go use Killing Spree. I could stun my enemy, use Killing Spree onto them if I had it, or use Adrenaline Rush in order to get as many combo points into my target, get as many run-throughs into them, and reduce the cooldown of most of my abilities. For example, I'll stun, I'll run through, get the stun back again. Crazy stuff, dude. Now I want to talk a bit about defensives. As an Outlaw Rogue, they didn't really change that much. We did lose a lot of defensive capabilities and utility-based abilities. Let me talk about what we do have though. First of all, we have Cloak. Still provides immunity of magic, 1.5 minute cooldown, basically the same way as it always has been. And when you get your artifact weapon, it'll heal you for every single magic spell that hits you while you have Cloak available. It's a lot of healing. Riposte is different. No longer do we have 100% dodge, instead we have 100% parry for 10 seconds. Each time you parry an attack, you'll riposte the target for 7k worth of physical damage. Cannot occur more than once every 1 second. It's a 2-minute cooldown and it's no longer a dodge, which kind of sucks for Outlaw Rogues when playing against Hunters. You can't parry Hunter attacks. That is the only issue that I have with this ability. But even though dealing with hunters, we do have a range capability to hit them back. So even though maybe we get kited by hunters and we can't dodge all their attacks, we can actually hit hunters right back and not let him get away from us in the first place. So repos does have advantages. No longer do you have prep or smoke bomb, prep is gone. So now you have to be very careful when you use your defensives, because you won't be able to have 2 of them, you only have 1 chance. But because of cooldown reduction for Outlaw Rogue, you can actually reduce the cooldown of your defensives. So using True Bearing with your defensives and then getting as many finishes in there as possible will help refresh your defenses back as quickly as possible. Your Vanish still functions like Vanish, 2-minute cooldown, nothing you can really do there. Your CC, for the most part, you still have a blind, works exactly like a blind did. Your Gouge is actually got buffed. Your Gouge in the enemy's eyes, incapacitating him for 4 seconds, damage will interrupt the effect, 10-second cooldown, 1 common point generation. Now this is a good thing, because for the most part I've seen rogues misuse Gouge or use Gouge poorly, or maybe not even use Gouge at all in PvP based situations, but now Gouge will award you an extra common point. This almost tells you, hey, when you're playing Outlaw Rogue, make sure to use Gouge properly, because you will be awarded a common point. Make sure to CC the healer, make sure to stop the DPS from attacking your healer, make sure to interrupt the cast. Gouge and being able to use it properly will not only award you an extra common point, but it'll get you ahead of the situation and ahead of the enemy. This is everything I have for you guys in terms of playing Outlaw Rogue. I think I covered every single base. For the most part, it is a lot like playing a combat rogue. So I think this is it, guys. I don't know what else I can talk about when it comes to an Outlaw Rogue. It is fairly simple of a spec. It is more about learning the different buffs that you get from Roll the Bones and how you adjust to those buffs and how you use them. It is a little bit more about watching for your energy and making sure not to just spam out your energy, because you have a pretty high chance to generate an extra common point and an extra free hit from Saber Slash. The spec does lose a bit of mobility, but it has some range capability with range slows, range stuns, grappling hook, which is like a heroic leap, and you have a lot of damage without having a ramp up mechanic. So at all times as an Outlaw Rogue, you're dealing the most potential damage. So I feel like the spec is not difficult. It is more about practicing with it and playing it to getting used to it and how it plays, getting used to the energy generation for it, getting used to the common point management of the spec. But the spec is definitely a little bit more complex in terms of common point management and energy management than a combat rogue was. As a combat rogue, you would spam out your Sinister Strike. This spec is more for a subtlety style of rogue who would backstab and then wait a bit, get the energy back, backstab and then get the energy weighted back up, in order to see just how much common points you have to work with, because you have a chance to get an extra one. So this is it, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully this gets you on a right path of playing Outlaw Rogue, and I hope, guys, that this guide was helpful for you. My name is Dalaran. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you enjoyed the guide, or this half guide, because I'm not making a full guide until the final game comes out at 110. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.